Hello, we're AJ, Joshua, and Diego, and today we'll be telling you about Japanese imperialism in Korea. During the late 19th century and prior to Japanese rule, Korea was a monarchy held under the power of King Gwonmu. Korea blossomed under Gwonmu, and most peasants, despite being too poor to afford luxuries, lived comfortably as rice or vegetable farmers. Outside of Korea, however, relations with foreign ministries suffered. Gwonmu was a fervent supporter of isolationism, an extreme reluctance to engage in relations with the outside world. As a result, Korea had to be self-reliant in most areas of their economy, including their food and technology. Against all odds, the rice farmers managed to stabilize Korea's agricultural economy, and all was well. As far as religion goes, a combination of Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, and even Christianity were prevalent among Korean peasants. In 1910, King Gwonmu declared himself Emperor of Korea and attempted to transform Korea into an empire. He wanted to make sure he could control every single way of Korean life, including its economy, government, and culture. However, he had one major obstacle in his way: the Japanese. Japan wanted to compete with the US and Great Britain. Japan's national pride, along with their feelings of strength and equality with Western nations, resulted in more imperialistic ideas. Japan had wanted to show the world that they too were a powerful nation. Korea was a great choice for Japan. It was fairly close and would greatly help with their economy and trade with other nations. Numerous Japanese came over to Korea to survey the land. Japanese businesses and governmental organizations established a near monopoly on commerce, industry, and trade. Progress in agriculture, energy, and transportation was all for the benefit of conquesting Asia. Japan tried to push towards a more modernized economy, an economy able to progress into the future. As they came over, the Japanese forced Emperor Gwonmu to sign the Proctorate Treaty, giving the Japanese official footholds in Korean resources. This decreased the amount of power that Emperor Gwonmu once held. It was followed by many Japanese citizens migrating into Korea, gradually representing an increasing larger proportion of the total population. August 22, 1910, Japan officially annexed Korea, marking the beginning of Japanese imperialism. Emperor Gwonmu was dethroned and replaced by Japanese General Tadaguchi Masatake. He died on January 21, 1919. The empire fell, and the Clone Wars began. Dun dun dun!
With direct control, Japan used their imperialistic power to transform Korea. Their lives changed drastically. Everything became Japanese. Koreans were forced to change their names to Japanese ones and were required to speak the Japanese language. Any pre-existing Korean history or curriculum in school was abolished. The Japanese religion of Shinto became mandatory to worship. The Japanese did not allow any other religion. Failure to obey resulted in death. On top of their cultural transformations, their economy was severely exploited. Japan forced the Koreans to export their rice to supply the Korean economy. They were also forced to work as slaves to farm these goods, and even as sex slaves, to pleasure the men who managed them. Many hours of overworking the Koreans led to a buildup of anger in many citizens. So they resisted their rule. This leads to fighting, outbreaks. Combined, around 2 million people resisted Japanese in some way or form. One of the most famous movements is the March 1st movement. People proclaimed to the Japanese imperialists that they did not approve of heavy taxes, their discriminative government supporting Japanese but against Koreans, forced labor, banning of Korean teachings and heritage, and loss of land. The Japanese could not manage to protest, so they sent in military forces, who instead started a massacre, resulting in the loss of over 7,000 lives. This stopped the Koreans from any further protests until after Japan was defeated in World War II and Korea was liberated. Although the Koreans had gained their independence back, the nation was still not united as it once was.
Following Liberation Day, Korea was divided into two countries, each influenced by different liberators. The northern half was liberated by the USSR, while the southern half was liberated by the United States. Each country adopted the economic tendencies of their liberators. The South took on the capitalist system, while the North inherited communism. After Korea was divided into its North and South counterparts in 1945, tensions between them began to rise. Deciding to attack South Korea, the North Koreans advanced their troops across the 38th parallel. The South Koreans, fearing the full force of the Chinese military, called for aid from the United Nations. After the United States intervened, China and the United States began fighting on behalf of the two Korean nations. After 3 whole years of fighting, both sides called a ceasefire, the results being that these two countries would agree to confirm each other as independent nations.
Last December, we received news that Fumio Kishida, the Japanese foreign minister, and Yu Bung-si, his South Korean counterpart, held a meeting in Seoul this Monday and have agreed to a fine of $8.3 million paid to South Korea. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe telephoned Park Geun-hye, the South Korean president, to offer his apologies.
Thousands of Korean comfort women were used as sex slaves for Japanese soldiers serving in World War II, many of which died during imprisonment. There are just 46 in South Korea today. These women feel that the Japanese government didn't have the victims in mind and simply apologized to maintain trade relations with Korea. Many Korean women have asked for an apology addressed specifically to the victims.
And that concludes our current event of Japanese imperialism upon Korea, which leads us back to today, Liberation Day. Many citizens gather together every year on August 15th to celebrate the independence Korea gained through a fight against Japan. Although many citizens are happy about their independence, they are still very scarred through the terror, events, and brutality Japan and other outside peoples forced upon Korea. To this day, Korea is still recognized as two independent nations, and the world continues. That's it for this Crash Course. I'm AJ Mackey. Have a good night. This video was brought to you by Joshua Zhang, Diego Brown, and AJ... Oh, okay, calm down. Diego, Josh, and me, AJ Mackey. Oh... Thanks. Stop it. Stop. Okay, seriously, stop. We're running out of time. Taking a 5?